host this evening, Tobias Harper. My name. Together, all of us, we have a number of curious and exciting topics to share with you. As attendees of the Hand I Supply Curiosity Club, you are now all members, provided you adhere to our philosophy. Ex curiositas scientia. We pledge to learn without prejudice in pursuit of our mutual goal, perpetual noviceship. We admit that it is impossible to know everything about anything, and thus we remain perpetually curious and perpetually novice. This is our flag and our mascot, Franklin. The lightning bolt represents the receipt of knowledge, the enlightenment of illumination, the resonance of truths understood. It awakens and excites us and makes us hungry for more. And now, I'm very happy to introduce Matt Foster, co-owner and designer of Foster Knives. Thank you, everybody. Wow. Well, thanks for letting me come here tonight and talk about knives and knife design. I'm actually really flattered there's more than Eric and Tobias here. So, just a brief bit about my background, which I think was up on the website. But basically, I started my career at Gerber Legendary Blades over in Tigard. Worked there for a number of years. Was in the marketing department, and ultimately my last position there was as the knife product manager. So basically responsible for the knife business and coming out with new knives and new products. So since then I've moved on to some other companies, some firearms companies and that sort of thing. But I've always loved knives. They're a great creative outlet. They're a lot of fun, and the knife is also a little bit more complex probably than it looks by just having a sharp piece of steel that cuts something. There's actually quite a bit that goes into it. So anyway, so as I go through the presentation and talk, just ask questions. I mean, that'd be much more of a conversation than me simply telling you about knives and materials and how to design them and so forth. So speak up, feel free to interrupt at any point in time, and we'll go from there. So I saw Tobias put up sort of the concept of, for the knife company and knives in general, okay, is there a market purpose for it, or is it sort of purely a functional purpose? And when I started my business with my partners, we looked at it, and the premise really was market driven. So, and of course within there would of course be some knives that had specific purposes, but in general it was primarily marketing driven. And what that purpose was at Gerber, and I've got a few examples here. Really, at that time that I was there, almost all the knives in the marketplace, they were black, plastic, or maybe some higher end materials like G10, which is a laminate. But they just, they were very sterile, very cold. But they had great features as far as that's when pocket clips kind of came in vogue. The pocket clip knife, kind of got its big thing in the 90s with Spyderco and one-handed opening and so forth. But again, they weren't very attractive. They certainly, quite frankly, weren't very fun to come out with. I mean, basically it was like, okay, here's an in-blade shape, and Walmart wants this. It's got a black handle pocket clip. I was like, yeah, okay, great, thanks. And then on the flip side of the coin, so, and just here's some examples. I mean, one of the things that if you were to take the knife company's catalogs, and if you weren't in the business, good luck seeing a difference. I mean, I can tell you which one these are right now because I know the companies, but really, it'd be really hard to ascertain whose knives are what. And sort of the exact opposite of that was that anything for sportsmen, hunters, shooting enthusiasts, that sort of thing, were literally the exact opposite. No modern features, no pocket clips, no one-handed opening. This would be a very typical sort of sportsman's knife, and this is recent production, fairly recent. But this is what was out there for hunting knives, sporting knives, and came of course in a leather sheath. Which whether it's the Buck 110 or the Gerber Folding Sportsman, or Kershaw had a number of knives that were wood handles, leather sheaths, and so forth. So my partners and I looked at it and said, well, what if we try to do something different? What if we wanted all these nice cool features like the pocket clip and the one-handed the better blade steels, the tactical knives we're having, and we would try to put those into, more the sporting knives. So that really was the market-driven purpose for the knives that we came out with. It was a lot more fun working on those. So, but again, but also it was very critical not to make it different just for the sake of being different. I mean, a knife still has to work, still has to fold, be safe, not cut you. Cut the things you wanted to, and not the things that you don't. So there still had to be some purpose in it. And at this point in time, when I was starting to formulate all this, I was actually still at Gerber. And we came out with this knife, which was called the Gerber Spectre. Now at the time, I get to have the caveat saying, okay, I wasn't the product manager yet, so the faults of this design were my fault. So I can just sort of, stand back and, throw the stones in my glass house here. But in general, it was actually a really great knife functionally. I mean, had a great, blade shape, which was good for, really everything from hunting, just general pocket clip carry. I mean, okay, if you're a tactical guy and think you're gonna use a knife for that kind of thing, okay, it was great for that too. Titanium liners, 154 cm blade. 154 was, at the time, was sort of the new high-end blade steel. Crucible Metals had used it for making jet turbine blades and some other exotic parts. So it was, pretty tough material. That was kind of the newest, latest, and greatest, above. It was a higher grade than 440C, 440A, all of your garden variety stainless steels. Where the design fell down was, one, because the materials and the manufacturing processes, it was a fairly expensive knife. Particularly for Gerber, it was well over $100. It was probably in the $129, $149 range, which, certainly was not Gerber's area of expertise. And I mean, it didn't have much in the way of styling. I mean, again, you don't want to put a bunch of bells and whistles on it just purely for that sake. But, I mean, for instance, if you look at the pivot point on it, I mean, it's a 632 screw. So you're asking the consumer to pay $149 for a knife, and it's got a screw you go to Home Depot and buy and shove it in the axle pivot point. That's a tough sell. But like I said, the function, I mean, it had the pocket clip, had the G10 handles, titanium liners, it just fell down a couple points. And then so for laughs and giggles, literally because I wanted to see what it would look like, I went to that wood store over in Tiger by the old Payless store over there, Napa Auto Parts off of Main Street and so forth. And literally just bought a piece of wood. I can't remember what it was. I think it was zebra wood, but anyway, I just actually brought one of the knives home, got a Dremel tool out, and literally sort of hand routed out this little wooden scale for it. I just wanted to see, And so surprisingly, a number of guys actually came to my desk and said, hey, I heard you kind of, modified one of our knives. I said, put the material on, didn't do anything else. But a lot of the guys at the shop actually liked it. So I drew up a thing, sort of a plan, presented to Gerber and said, hey, I think we ought to go this route, do some more organic materials and styling, but introduce the modern design elements. And Gerber was just too busy doing other things. I mean, it wasn't so much like they thought it was a bad idea as much as when you're servicing Walmart and Cabela's and Gander Mountain, these major accounts, their main concern was getting this knife down from $29.95 to $19.95. Because then Walmart would tell you, well, we'll literally sell twice as many of them. Yeah, okay. Can't argue with that. I mean, when you're doing $16+ million with Walmart, you tend to kind of do what they want you to do. So, anyways, so just for other reasons, it was just time for me to. There was another job opportunity that I thought had a lot better potential, so I moved on. And it was at Warren Scope Mounts, which I'm a hunter and a shooter by hobby, passion, trade, whatever, I guess now that's almost part of my job, it seems, mostly. But they had a machine shop. Had CNCs and a turning center, and it's like, I kind of wonder. So, talked with this buddy of mine, and he said, yeah, let's kind of work on some of those ideas you talked about. So it's okay, let's see if we can make some knives. And so I was telling Eric earlier tonight, these were done on an old drawing program called Corel something or other. I mean, it's not a CAD program. I'm going to we're going for here. So you can see we've got, you know, we've got the pocket clip, got the one-handed opening, some of the elements of the, you know, hardcore tactical knives, and yet something that a hunter or sportsman, just an average person might carry. And so that's actually kind of how it started with these initial concepts. So we chose some models and said, okay, let's see if we can you know, make some. So we actually made some prototypes. Now what's interesting is, let's see here, that one I actually have the original prototype, and the blade is actually unsharpened. Here, we'll start on this side. Although you still don't like to stick yourself with it. And at the time, a gentleman named Ron Lake, who was a custom knife maker, I talked with him just for some advice, and he was gracious enough to say, well, you know, how would you like to make one of my custom knives, which is the one you see at the lower left. Now, his handmade version would go for like $5,000. So to come out with one for $189 was a really great buy for the you know, high-end knife guy. And then a hunting knife, and then that knife in the far right corner we'll talk about here a little bit more in a minute. So, but we got some great feedback, some great potential, and then it basically brought them to market. So the Lake knife actually was a really great seller for a while. That's the one in the lower left corner. The one in the upper right corner, which, and I'll talk about sort of purpose-driven versus market-driven in a minute, but was also an okay seller for reasons that didn't do as well as I would have liked. And then, of course, this orange-handled knife for a survival knife actually did quite well. The one in the upper right is the one that we actually still have in production. Became the most popular selling knife. And let's see here. And the reason why is that knife was 100% market driven. Basically, in a nutshell, there's almost no practical use for that knife other than it cuts. I mean, it's not really a tactical knife, it's not really a hunting knife, it's just what it is. And what it is was we wanted to capture styling elements and design elements from arguably the world's most popular pistol, which is the 1911 pistol. Anybody familiar with that handgun? Vaguely, sort of? Okay. As you can see, these are actually some original ones that Eric just recently found, but I'll take the newer ones. So this is one of the knives, and it is, you know, high-end knife. It's got all machine handles with 4cm blades. So now I'll preface by saying the gun is unloaded, but you can kind of see the styling resemblance. It's been our most popular knife, but like I said, so the market-driven purpose was we wanted to appeal to the owner of that gun. That was it, end of story. That was the purpose for that knife. So it's pretty much a market-driven deal.
What kind of sales were you seeing?
Well, in the, you know, hundreds of units, not, you know, we were,
Yeah.
you know. Our stuff is basically custom production. I mean, talking to my wife, she'll say it's an expensive hobby. It's pretty much what it is. We had some production problems early on as well, which really stymied our growth. Basically, the shop I was working for couldn't make them. So that turned out to be a bit of an issue. But now, one interesting thing about this knife, there you go. So these are actually automatics as well. So they work like a normal knife, but you can also go like that. So it's a trick.
It's in the grip.
The skate, put your thumb, pull it back, further back. Okay, now push that scale out towards the back of the handle. Just like that. So, but anyway, so some examples, you know, design-driven versus market-driven. So, you know, really the first question is how is the knife going to be used? instance, the blade shape, it's a big knife, so it's actually probably not the quintessential pocket knife, although that's what it's. Don't laugh. We actually, when I was a Gerber, we had a lot of people request we put a pocket clip on this knife. I'm not kidding. Certain guys, it's the whole, big truck, big gun, big knife kind of thing. So the intent was, we haven't done it yet. One thing we learned in the knife business was that if you're going to make different sizes of a knife, you always come out with the larger version first. We had learned that if you introduce sort of a mid-size or small knife, come up with a larger one later, the sales never seem to be as great as the larger one first, and then people seem to also go back and buy the mid-size one, but not vice versa. So the intent is, we will come out with essentially a 3/4 scale version of this knife here. And that will end up being a more popular seller because it's honestly quite a bit easier to carry in your pocket. So, but anyways, like I say, so the purpose is really going to determine critical features such as the blade shape, with pocket knives, really having things more like a drop point, hunting knife having something that's a lot more upswept for, skinning and that sort of thing. Obviously you've got, hardcore tactical knives, which I have something like a Tanto blade like that, which is, purely made for piercing and such. Well, another basic question also is fixed or folding. I mean, a hunting knife, obviously a fixed blade has some really great advantages. It can't fold up on your hand. They're a lot more durable, no moving parts. At least it shouldn't have any moving parts. Drawbacks, of course, was quite a bit bulkier. So here's a couple fixed blades that we ended up introducing. Now this knife was actually almost 100% purpose driven. I worked with a really great guy, a guy named Larry Weissum. He was a biologist in Texas, did a lot of deer herd management and that sort of thing. The guy has been on an inordinate amount of hunts and had experience using knives, field dressing animals and so forth. And he came to me and said, "Hey, what do you think about doing a hunting knife?" And I said, "Okay, we could do that." So we kind of worked together and came up with this design, which arguably is a really, really great hunting knife design. Again, contrary to popular belief, you don't need a really big knife as a hunting knife. I mean, that knife there is plenty adequate for elk and moose and deer and everything else. The problem is that this was a really great lesson in give the market what it wants, not what it needs. The knife didn't do exceptionally well. Doesn't have a lot of sizzle. Actually had the criticism that, it's not real flashy and frankly looks a little bit like a kitchen knife. Which is unfortunate. So from a performance standpoint, the knife worked really great. It's got the 154 cm blade steel, which keeps an edge longer than your 440 type steels. Just didn't sell. So it's also a lesson in don't be married to your design because may not be what other people want. This would be another example of one that was literally 100% purpose driven. Now this isn't one of my designs. This is actually an old Gerber design, but that really illustrates that it functions beautifully for what it's designed for. It's a bird and trout knife. It's got a little spoon in the back for cleaning out along the spine of a trout. Thin little tip for field dressing game birds, and very reminiscent of kitchen knife. So those were really popular in the 60s, that style for Gerber, cast aluminum handles and so forth. I think if you introduce that knife today, maybe some guys would like it from a nostalgic standpoint, but it just would not sell in today's market, really.
That prototype you handed out, was that a Foster's knife? Or?
This one here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually designed that one. The one thing about my background is, I'm not a designer by education or even trade. teaching myself how to design knives, mainly because I actually hired somebody to design and engineer one of the knives, and quickly learned that if I was going to get it going, I was not going to be able to afford to do that unless I wanted to sell one knife until, you know, from here to eternity. So, no exaggeration, I literally sat down with AutoCAD and the manual and a handmade prototype of this knife and a set of calipers, and literally figured out how to use AutoCAD while simultaneously designing this knife. And yes, it was like watching grass grow and paint dry. Actually, it was probably more like the bamboo shoots under the fingernail thing. It was really painful. Because AutoCAD's not really a fun program. I mean, it's little colored lines, and what you see is what you get. And, but it worked. It worked, and I learned an awful lot. And so since then, I've been able to use a few more sophisticated programs, certain things that are a bit more fun. So we, you know, like I say, these ones in general, basically upper left, market-driven, upper right, purpose-driven, lower left, 100% purpose-driven with this lovely orange handle. And the late folder, purely market-driven. You know, for a person that just wants a really, really great little pocket knife, there isn't any one feature about it you could say. I mean, it's, you know, it's not good for opening bottles, or you know, it's great for opening envelopes or something. But it was just a really pretty, nice knife that had some features. Has some features that other knives didn't really have at the time. You can see the pivot point, for instance. That was Ron Lake's design, rather than just a typical screw. This, you know, nice little milled thing. It was a great little knife. So I kind of missed that it's not in production.
What do you find the biggest design challenges between designing like a folding knife and a knife with a sheath? What are the biggest differences there?
Everything. And actually, that's, I'll just go and kind of launch to it now, is the folding knives are surprisingly complicated. I mean, that was absolutely a deficiency on my part, where it's like, oh, okay, well, it's just a knife. It's only got one or two moving parts. How tough could it be? Yeah, it's pretty tough. The biggest challenge with the folding knife is honestly just making everything fit, and then still having it turn out to be what you want it to look like. Because obviously, wherever you put the pivot point, you know, how much blade you have behind the pivot point comes around. If you don't do that right, then it's, you know, sticking out the front of the knife, and that's just not acceptable, let alone ugly. So, and did you, you know, get the lock designed correctly so that when it's open, this is the lock there, and it's not sticking out. So, it's tough. The fixed knives are really easy. I mean, you basically draw the shape you want and literally decide where you want the handle to stop. I mean, here we decided to round it like this rather than trying to form fit it exactly with this, which really would have gotten your way anyways for what you want to use this knife for. You know, we could have scaled it back more. You gotta make a decision early on if you're gonna try to have it flush fit, or if you're gonna do like some people do, which is, I think is kind of cheating a little bit, is you purposely make the handle smaller than the blade. So you've got, you know, the ridge of the, you know, the profile of the blade essentially proud of the handle. Much cheaper, much quicker. You know, you can just zip through the handles on a CNC and not worry about, you know, fit and finish. But it's not as clean looking. So it took a lot of time for us to get here, and it's still not perfect. But I mean, it's definitely acceptable, and there's certainly no rub points or anything like that on your hand. And we had quite a bit easier time with the micarta than we did the wood. You know, the problem was the wood was actually Coca-Cola, and we actually had to have it made in Costa Rica, because if you had them send you the wood and you cut it, to quote one of my friends who was actually in that business, he said basically it turns into a propeller. You know, because of the humidity and warping and stuff, your handle all of a sudden, you know, gets kind of all twisted. He had some 4-letter expletives in there, which, you know, I won't use, but importing the Coca-Cola and trying to do it yourself was actually really frustrating. So ask me how I know. So yes, that's probably one of the more difficult aspects. So speaking of which, talking about designing a knife. Like I said, what type will it be? This is actually a knife that I actually made for somebody. You can tell it's fairly unifunctional. It's supposed to be a, you know, small, concealable basically knife, you know, sharp shiv, whatever you want to call it. But the fixed blades are easy. Draw your overall design, play with the length and blade shape, make sure the handle is comfortable, but the fixed blades are pretty easy. When I do the knife design, I work directly on the CAD program. I don't do any, you know, I'll do some hand drawings occasionally just to sort of get an overall look for something, see if I like it. But in general, with the programs now, I can do it just as quick on a 3D modeling program, and it instantaneously gives me feedback about what it looks like and the dimensions are correct, than drawing on paper like in some, you know, in Photoshop or something like that, and then trying to transfer it to a design. So I find that the CAD type program is really, really helpful for that. Like I said, let you, the critical components for when you do the components line up. Like I talked about earlier, is the blade fit the handle, which is also another thing, not having the tip sticking out. And that's really bad for the pocket. So this is, I was also explaining to Eric, this is, and it's kind of hard to see, and I apologize, it looks a lot better on the screen. This is this knife here. That's the actual AutoCAD drawings. This is another one that I laboriously sat down. This was one of the earlier renderings, the pictures I'd shown, and I actually paid a custom knife maker to literally hand make this knife. Again, see fit and finish, see if we liked it, see if it functioned the way we wanted to, and so forth. The problem was that, well, he was a custom knife maker, it was made by hand, and here you go, this is what you get. Okay, I can't exactly hand somebody and say, here, go make this. I mean, I could, and write lots of checks. So again, sat down with AutoCAD, before the 3D program, and laboriously drew this thing out. But it's okay, because it gives you a chance to actually go in and make some changes you want to make. Not the least of which, there's always a compromise between design and manufacturability. I mean, you can make anything you want, but it's a question of whether anybody's going to pay for it or not. For instance, on the, who's got the little lake knife? The gentleman right there. So you can see the sides of it are actually somewhat flat. They are flat. We radius the edges, of course. Now, Ron's handmade prototype, the handle was very nicely rounded. Very contoured, even the bone. The bone was actually flat. That's actually a bone on the handle, not plastic. The problem is, to do that, you would have had to basically do the whole NURBing thing with the CNC, and I mean, that would have been a $500 knife. Well, the market for a $500 knife is a lot smaller than the market for a $150 knife. So you make some concessions. So some things we've done, obviously, was we really try to increase the radius on the edges of the knife. We actually raised up the cattle bone, so it did give it some, you know, three-dimensionals to it, rather than just, you know, being flat and perfectly inset there. And Ron worked with us on that. I mean, he actually had some really great ideas on how to make it manufacturable without, you know, completely trashing the design. And that's always the trick. So it's one of the things in AutoCAD here gives you the opportunity to do. And again, it's really hard to see here, and I've got some other drawings I can maybe pull up later, but for instance, this knife, if you look at it this way, is, you know, very, very rounded. And that's great, and it feels really great in the hand. The problem is it's going to be really, really tough to manufacture. Now, all we figured out we had to do was essentially, if you were to look at it this way, in the production knife, it comes up and is just ever so slightly flat and comes back down. And if you basically blend that well enough, yeah, I mean, you'll kind of see it, but not really. And then what that is CNC can come through with a really large radius cutter and basically kind of come around like that, and it gives it a nice profile. And you didn't have to sit there and nerve it because you didn't have it 100%, you know, rounded in a particular arc. So that's one of the nice things about working in a CAD program like this, and I call it a worksheet, where I literally just throw all the parts on there at once. And a lot of engineers, and I'm not an engineer, that's why I don't do it that way, you know, it'd be abhorrent for them to see that you've got all this stuff on the screen and parts are mixed and match, and they wouldn't like that. Like I said, fortunately, I'm not an engineer. So what this gives me opportunity to do is basically literally start taking the parts. For instance, this knife has a bolster, okay, a little silver part on the handle. And so I needed to see, okay, if I put the bolster on here, how far back does it go? Is it going to interfere with any of the fasteners in the wood handle? You know, really tough to do if you're trying to draw the parts individually and keep going back and forth into an assembly So I just throw it all up on the screen and start moving parts around and seeing if things fit. And if you don't like something, I don't usually delete it immediately. I usually just drag it and leave it over here in case I need to come back to it, which is more often than not, you end up sort of salvaging that part. So it works well. Now, fortunately, I did manage to eventually upgrade to a 3D modeling program. So, which is where I took the original 1911 folder and made it into the automatic. So, this is another really great tool that lets you, again, move the parts. This one you can really, move things around, see if they fit. A lot of, you can tell there's a few more parts in this one. We've got a little sear and a little bushing for the screw here that moves up and down. But this worked really well. It's a good little program.
Is that SolidWorks?
It's a program called Libre Design. I don't know, has anybody heard of that at all? Or, yeah, they must not do a great job marketing. A Libre, yeah. I don't remember how I heard of it. But it's fantastic because one, it was really inexpensive compared to SolidWorks. And SolidWorks, yeah. I mean, what does SolidWorks have? Like $5 grand a station or something like that? Or is that wishful thinking? Ooh, it's on sale. Excellent. This was like $800, and it does export to IGS files. I've had a number of parts sent to shops to use SolidWorks. They can work with it no problem. So I've been really happy with it. It's probably not nearly as capable, but again, I'm designing a knife, not a spaceship or a medical part, so I'm okay with it. But like I said, I've not actually had any problems whatsoever. I mean, it's got all the details. You can see, laser pointer, but you can see where this is actually the locking surface of the blade, which is where the liner lock comes over and engages. So it works great. And again, this was actually sort of the equivalent of a worksheet, so I can throw everything up there and put the parts in. You can actually move the blade in and out and choose where you want it to pivot. You can look at it and see if it's going to stay in the handle or not, which is a good thing. So just some more views of it. And you can, in the upper left one, for instance, the handle is either hidden or I've got it, so transparent that you can't hardly see it. So it's another really great feature. You can sort of hide it and yet still have it there to work with. And it's actually kind of a fun program to use. You can actually still be very creative in it, certainly to a much greater degree than AutoCAD. I mean, I'm not here to bash AutoCAD, but let's just say I've used AutoCAD in years. So this is much better. And in the same program, you can actually literally take the model and just, in one of the pull-down menus, click on it, and you can start doing some rendering capability with the parts or with the assembly drawing. Which turns out to be very helpful because you can really kind of see what it looks like before you even have to worry about cutting any metal or any parts. So now it's interesting. Does anybody recognize this knife? Kind of, sort of?
Yeah.
Maybe this one? So the shape, everybody liked the shape, everybody liked the blade style, but going to a different market, this knife is heavy and certainly appeals to one set of crowd. This one, we wanted to take the same blade shape, actually use some of the same hardware, blade pivot, what we call the back spacer and a few other components. I would say salvage them, but hey, you got them, might as well use them. So this goal is we haven't brought this one out yet. We're working on it, trying to make an ultra lightweight frame lock. And the frame lock is different than the liner lock in that you can see the locking bar is actually not covered. It's a very, very thick piece of steel. It makes it much stronger. You have to mill the back of it out to actually get it to flex so it'll snap over and lock. But this one we're actually looking forward to. It should be a lot of fun. So in that rough texture of the handle will unfortunately basically just be a CNC that goes through the ball mill and checkers one way and checkers the other, and there's just not much way for us to get around that. So, but yeah, it's gonna be fun. So, you know, I don't know how interested you guys are in sort of the sequence of events and the actual process making a knife. I mean, want me to run through that real quick, or?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. I mean, it is interesting. I mean, even though I worked at a knife company, Gerber, I have to sort of, after the fact, give the engineers and manufacturing guys some credit, because I used to be somewhat critical, thinking it's just a knife. Learned the hard way, so that's good. So the knife, obviously, heart of the knife is the blade. Excuse me. And other than the obvious thing, okay, what kind of knife is it going to be, being the first choice, the next choice would be, okay, so if it's going to be a hunting knife or a pocket clip knife or whatever, what kind of blades do they want it to be out of? Are you looking for something that's really, really tough or something that's really, really hard? Because pocket knives, for instance, you don't want to sharpen very often. You carry your pocket, open your envelopes, cut your apples, do whatever, and you never sharpen it again. You don't typically, you're not going to use something like this as a cutting crowbar, okay? Which is unfortunately what a lot of people end up using hunting and survival knives for. Is, like I say, they all think that it's a crowbar. It's really not. So for the pocket knife, you're going to go with steel. You want to have a much higher Rockwell scale number. 154 cm, ATS 34, S30V, and all these acronyms and numbers and letters put together that equal basically a formula for steel. Does everyone know what makes steel hard, basically? Nobody care. It's yeah, it's pretty much the carbon content. So your higher end blade steels actually really push the edge between the amount of carbon and the amount of chromium in them to allow it to be still considered stainless steel. For instance, the steel that I make my knives out of, it will rust. It's classified as stainless steel, and it's not nearly as bad as the old carbon steels, but it will rust. 440A, you pretty much leave in salt water, it probably wouldn't rust, but you can only get it to like 54, 55 in the Rockwell scale, maximum. Whereas the 154C that we're using, for instance, you can probably get upwards of 60, 61 and not have it be too brittle to be useful. So, which is the trick with steel, you can actually usually take it well above its performance parameters as far as the hardness goes, but then it usually will snap or become too brittle or that sort of thing. So that's your first choice, and then depending upon that choice that basically determines whether you're going to fine blanket, which is the 440s, 420s. But basically, most of the blades you see here were actually either laser jet or water cut. So that's the first thing, is you basically got to make a blade blank, which I meant to bring one. I apologize I didn't, but it's basically just the rough profile of the blade. That's what you get. After that, now that the steel's still soft, you basically put it in CNC and you punch in all of your geometry. Okay, outside profile. Most importantly, your locking geometry, which is this part right here on the blade, okay? That's where the liner's coming over and engaging, and that engagement has to be very, very precise. I mean, there's a little bit of latitude there, but not much. And so you're dealing with a lot of variables. I mean, so where the knife pivots obviously controls where that locking part of the blade is moving back and forth. So that's why most people use a CNC. Have to, because if the datum, which is the pivot point, moves at all, now it's where the blade comes up and stops. The blade stop is going to not be on. The lock's not going to be on. It's just a mess. Again, ask me how I know. We had actually a little anecdote. I should have brought one of these. I'm sorry I couldn't find them, but always note the scale in your drawing. Really important. So this little knife, so we had some blades, sent out to be laser cut, and the shop was all proud. Hey, we got them done early. Here they are. And so they bring these box blades, and I hadn't realized I designed a folding machete. So, I mean, no exaggeration. The blade was like that one. Going, that sucks. So they were nice enough to actually put them back in the sheet of steel, which they hadn't scrapped yet, and then literally ran the program again and cut them all out. But it was fun. It was also a lot of waste of some really expensive material. So anyway, but see, you punch all over the CNC, and that's probably the most critical part. 'Cause like I say, you've got see where the knife blade go. You've actually got like a little ball detent. When you feel the knives and it comes down and the blade snaps closed, that's a little ball detent on the side that's on the liner. That has to line up exactly. Where the back of the blade comes and hits the blade stop has to line up exactly so the lock comes over. So there's a lot of geometry that the CNC is really only going to do it. So once that's all done, and this kind of surprises people, you heat treat it. This is where you actually heat treat the blade before you grind it. Okay? Now, a lot of production, high production knives like the Gerbers and stuff will do it differently. They'll grind them and run through heat treatment. It's fine, but most of your higher end blade steels, you actually heat treat it first, and then you go through and do your surface grinding, taking the dimension of the steel to an exact thickness, and then this we put your the bevel on it, basically. And now you pretty much have a blade depending upon the finish you want. Scotch-Brite, tumbled with rock media, bead blast, or whatever. So it kind of surprises people, and that actually is a very, very short version of it. I mean, it's for basically just a little chunk of steel. It goes through quite a process just to be, become a blade that cuts something. The handle, fortunately, is actually probably one of the easier parts. You literally just choose your handle material, titanium, aluminum, whatever, D10. Get your coupons, you put them in the CNC, and you run your program, and usually, if you designed it properly, you come out with a handle. Pretty simple. So that's, like I said, that's kind of the refreshing part when you're working on a knife. Liners are also pretty easy. Usually those are titanium or steel. Actually, they're always titanium or steel. Titanium, of course, laser cut. You can't blink titanium. It's way too gummy. So it's a lot softer than steel, but it sticks. I mean, you can't blink titanium, at least not to my knowledge.
Blank titanium?
Yeah, fine blanket. No fine blankiness?
I don't think so.
Okay, apologize. Fine blanking, you have basically a cookie cutter, but you also have the reciprocal die on the bottom of it. Okay, and so you go across and it just punches it out. For instance, here we go. Like a typical Gerber knife like this in the $40 range is going to be made out of 420 stainless steel or 440 stainless steel. And the material is running these dies, and the machine is just pounding them out. I mean, just popping them out at a very rapid rate. The machines are actually so noisy, we actually did not have that process in Gerber. I mean, for the hundreds of thousands of knives we produced, it still wasn't worth bringing that machine in-house and putting up with the noise issues. So not a really great process unless you're the one probably making the money off it. But anyways, but you really can't do that with titanium, and you can't do it with the higher end blade steels as well, which is why a lot of the smaller shops gravitate towards the higher end blade steel. Is it puts you on a little bit more even footing. I mean, because if I was going to make it out of 440C, I still can't afford a fine blanket. And you're talking, $20,000 for a tool, and you haven't even made a knife yet. And it's just to punch out the blank. But even a big shop like Gerber, if you're going to use ATS-34 or S30V, you're still having laser cut. So, puts you on a little bit more competitive footing. And then basically knives have a bunch of miscellaneous turn parts. Axles and blade stops and screws, and so that's why I put lathes are your friend. And the more things you can design as a turned part. Turned parts are usually very inexpensive compared to milled parts. I mean, lathes can usually just crank them out, spit them out. You can actually do some pretty nice geometry with a lathe, with steps and certain things. If you've got a mill turn center, that's even better. You guys know what a mill turn center is? A lathe that actually has an active head comes in and can do some cutting and stuff. So, and the handle I did kind of skip over. The finish becomes kind of critical. So, a couple different finishes, for instance, is this one here is actually electroless nickel, which turns out to actually be a really, really great handle coating for aluminum because it's actually very hard and it wears very well. Most typically, of course, you're going to have the anodized finish, either black or some color variant. And then something we've been experimenting with is Cerakote. So it's an applied ceramic coating. It's very, very durable. Comes in a lot more colors than anodizing. it's a nice coating. And those are the manufacturing processes. Maybe questions or anything specific on the knife you want to how you make it?
I just don't know why is it surprising that you heat treat before you surface grind on the blade, and what difference?
Well, because it grinds a lot quicker when it's soft.
Right.
But one of the reasons you do that is when you grind the blade and heat treat it after the fact, you run a lot greater risk of the blade warping. Because you take material away from it and however the stresses were set at the metal and that sort of thing. So, when the blade is, at its max hardness, you're going to use it and you surface grind that and then grind it into it. That's what you get. It's not going to warp. It's not going to change on you. It's definitely harder on the grinding wheels. Yeah, actually, kind of think if we did have a batch. I forgot how it happened. When I was a Gerber, we actually had a batch of blades that either semi got hardened or they were work hardened or hardened because of the laser jet edge or the laser edge, excuse me. And when the grinding wheels hit them, I mean, they basically exploded. I mean, it was not a fun day in the shop. Fortunately, I work in production, so it wasn't as bad for me, but it was still kind of ugly. Yeah, so you kind of want to make sure you know the hardness of the steel when you're taking the wheels to it as well.
I have one more question about the
Sure.
steel. So so like a high carbon steel, like C95, now that's gonna rust real easily. That wouldn't classify as stainless anymore? Where's I don't know the line.
I don't remember the percentages. I mean, some real common carbon steels are like D2 tool steel, O2, and it's unfortunate. That's another thing that you trade secrets away. But my partners and I are kind of thinking about actually reintroducing some tool steel blades because it's one of those things where maybe it was the right idea with the wrong execution. You had a really great material way back when, and blades were tool steel or carbon steel,
Right.
but they held an edge really well. They're very tough, very durable. I mean, it's tool steel for gosh sakes. But like I say, it'll rust if you sneeze on it. I mean, it's just not good. But with these modern coatings, whether it's titanium nitride or Cerakote's actually a great corrosion preventing coating. Yeah, maybe it's time to actually do a blade out of D2 tool steel. Something that's going to hold. I mean, you can get it to like a Rockwell of 63 and not have it be brittle. Whereas your 440s, I mean, if you can get it to 58 on a good day, you're doing well. So, and it's one of those scales that's geometric or whatever the hell it is, but it's not linear as far as decimal scale or whatever. Yeah. So something we're kind of thinking about. So just a little thing talking about marketing and design and manufacturing is, I think it was Eric early on. It was even before I was making my own knives, talking about designing and basically not making everything look like a chiclet. Wasn't that the phrase, Eric? Something like that? He can't hear me. But basically, you can't let manufacturing get too involved to the point where, okay, because if they had their way, it'd be a square handle with a square blade, without a single radius. And plus manufacturing, you're trying to keep the cost down and do it as most efficiently as possible. The flip side of the coin is this was a knife that we came out with while I was a Gerber. It's called the Airframe. And it's a great knife. It was a good seller. When we originally got this thing costed out, all of us basically, about fell out of our chairs. One of the reasons is that there was about $11 just in custom fasteners in this knife. And in the consumer products world, usually it's a factor of 3 or 4. Something costs you $1, it's going to cost the consumer $3 to $4 depending upon your accounts and cost structures and that sort of thing. So so we went back and said, okay guys, so what you're telling me is you want me to go out and sell this to people, sort of fully acknowledging that they're basically paying $44 for screws, right? And they didn't even look good. I mean, they weren't even like, they didn't have like fancy turned heads on everything. They were just, custom lengths and this and that, and okay, fine. And fasteners, particularly in knife manufacturing, do tend to be problematic. And the reason why is that your tolerance on the length of the screw, if it's a pan head, it's measured from the bottom. If it's the, the tapered ones, they're measured from the top. Tolerance, think plus or minus like, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch. I mean, they're just off-the-shelf fasteners in some ways basically suck. But they're really, really cheap, which is good. So if you can design around that and not mitigate the look that you're going for, the performance you're going for, do it. I mean, you're a lot better off doing that than coming back and saying, oh, we got it designed exactly this way. We ended up putting basically off-the-shelf fasteners in this, and nobody would ever know. So you just took $44 basically out of the MSRP on the thing.
How did you have to change the design to get that to work?
I'm not sure we did. That's what was really frustrating. No, I think they had to shorten, because these things thread into basically a spacer that's underneath here. So, they played with the spacer length, and I think we played with the thickness of the back spacer, and, a few other very minor things where, again, holding them up, the consumer won't. And if the consumer knows, the consumer might not care. I mean, for instance, these knives, we primarily use off-the-shelf fasteners. Now, designing the automatic mechanism, this particular screw here that went into that little bushing, there was no off-the-shelf screw that was going to work ever, period. Wasn't going to happen without really mitigating how this whole thing looked and functioned here. Okay, fine. So I've got basically one custom fastener there and one custom fastener there for the axle. The rest, if I absolutely got in a pinch, I could go to Home Depot and purchase. And there's 632 and 256 screws. Gives you a lot of flexibility from a manufacturing standpoint, from a sourcing standpoint. You're not beholden to one supplier supplying the one screw that works in your knife. So there are some advantages, like I say, as long as it doesn't just completely mitigate the entire project. Profile mill, it's another thing. You'd be amazed the sort of the features and geometry you can get either in your blanking process, your laser cutting process, or the milling. For instance, I mean, they're pretty subtle, but when I had originally designed this knife, unfortunately the people that I was working with to produce these helped me see the light. I had some bumps along the top edge here, for a little gripping surface, and frankly, just to give it, a little something, for gosh sakes, so it wasn't just this completely smooth knife. And so I, of course, had to design, and the only way to do it would have been literally, route out the profile and come back with a little teeny cutter, come in and go, and cut the little dimples into it. That's machine time, that's cost, it's another cutter. So guys working with said, well, why don't we do this? Why don't we basically, because we got to drill the hole for the 256 screw anyway. So you got to have that tool. So let's just come in and real quick, just punch some little holes in it, and punch some little holes down here and all the way across here. And then when we take the profile cutter to it, oh, look at that. I've got these rounded, contoured bumps. They're not probably exactly what I wanted, but it also shaved an awful lot of cost out of the finished product. And really, I'd probably the only one to ever know because I saw the original design. I mean, if nobody else saw it, they probably wouldn't know or wouldn't care. So, I think about profile milling is also, if you can, I mean, one of the important things also is try to design around a standard cutter. If you make a radius that can be done basically by the radius of the cutter, then the cutter just has to basically plunge, come in, and lift up versus sweeping, coming back around. It doesn't sound like much in working on one product, but if you're trying to produce hundreds or God forbid thousands of something, that machine time really, really starts to add up. And again, as long as it doesn't mitigate the overall look or design or function. I think that's, we covered most of those. So I'm trying to think of any other fun little examples of that sort of thing. But, in general, that's pretty much it. What's that?
The Gerber knife, the one that you're most lately talking about, most recently, the silver one.
Oh, silver. Yeah.
Is that currently in production?
I don't think so. I was telling Tobias that actually, that's an example of, to a certain degree, of a missed opportunity. The handle is actually cast titanium, and
Very light.
it is light, and it's a cool knife. And the reason they cast it was all those little cutouts would have actually been really, really expensive to do in the CNC. But if you were going to cast it, then you might as well have gone for broke. And I mean, it still kind of looks like a milled handle.
Yeah. You might have gone ahead and profiled that.
Exactly. You probably could have got away with putting in a lot of features that frankly would have been almost impossible to do with the CNC. So, we just kind of missed the boat on that one. Like I say, it was a missed opportunity, particularly when you look at the cost that the company paid for the casting tool MSRP on that was $249, $240, excuse me. Which you can see why I didn't want it to be $284 with the custom fasteners. So
Which one is that?
that's the one that had the custom fasteners. It's called the airframe. It's I think it made it in 2000, 2001, something.
Your 1911 companion, the automatic,
Mhm.
the button. What's the price point on that?
The MSRP on that is with the and I didn't comment on the grips by the way, is $279.
Okay. And what's the price range of your?
Well, the manual folders are quite a bit less expensive. They're under $200. And like I say, the automatics just because of all the extra internal parts and the VZ grips, which work better with the auto mechanism because they're micarta and quite a bit more stable, upwards of $279. So this is the most expensive one we have. This was also a problem with selling a fixed blade. Is you look at it and go, well, come on, it's just a piece of steel. How expensive could it be? Well, the problem is this was actually a $129 knife because the blade steel itself is actually very, very expensive. Using genuine Cocobolo was also, not cheap. Having a leather sheath actually made in Texas rather than, overseas. And by the time you do all the markups, almost that was a $129 knife. And people look and go, wow, it doesn't even move. It doesn't even fold or anything. I mean, so it's kind of hard to. Fixed blades, unfortunately, probably don't represent a really great value to the dollar for the consumer, so they're actually very difficult to design in a way that looks good, can perform good, and man, how can you get some cost out of that darn thing? So, this version was actually even a little bit more expensive because of the green canvas micarta handle and the Kydex sheath.
Do you guys sell out at Antique Backs or Sportsman's or gun shops?
No, actually, most of our sales were almost entirely online. Like I said, that one's actually out of production now, although we are thinking about redoing that knife, maybe with a little bit, snazzier handle.
What's material?
Green canvas micarta.
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 What's the production technique for the sheet?
Thermoforming. So it's not injection molded, which, we could have that, and that's the difference between mass production versus, you get sort of that chicken and egg. And if I could afford the investment to, buy an injection mold, that sheath instead of being $15, because it's basically handmade by a guy that literally cuts out the Kydex, puts it in the form, molds it, puts the hand, it's an expensive project. Or you have an injection mold for like, I don't know, $1.
Right.
The tools
Yeah,
but
minimum quantity, $5,000,
exactly, and the tool's gonna cost you $50 grand, so that's the problem.
Have you looked into some of the more rapid prototype manufacturing processes like Center Metal?
Yeah, there are some guys that have looked at doing some sintered metal technology with blades. Again, the cost to get into it tends to be prohibitive, at least for a little custom shop like. But there's definitely some neat, cool stuff out there.
Is the steel quality high enough to do that with the?
Yeah, it's actually getting there. I mean, it's not like it was before, where
Right.
but yeah, it's turning out some pretty good stuff. So, and the benefit there, it's you weigh that sort of okay, it might be more costly from a getting into it standpoint, but let's face it, you can pretty much produce a finished blade. And you can center in a lot of the geometry. So,
Since this one is purpose driven, can you talk about like the various features and what they do?
yeah, actually, believe it or not, one of the main features of this knife that's purpose driven was that it actually has a distinct lack of features. A lot of hunting knives, which again, maybe we should have taken cue because it didn't sell that well. But you don't really need a big hand guard. You're not stabbing with this knife, so you don't have to worry about your hand, running up the blade. Whereas a lot of traditional hunting knives had, big, bolsters and hand guards and that sort of thing, and they tend to just get in your way. It's something else that gets gunked up, frankly, and something you got to clean off. So with this gentleman I work with, who just call it like it is. I mean, he's probably field dressed and butchered more whitetail than any 100 people on the planet combined. I'm a hunter, so I'd had some pretty distinct ideas what I wanted in a hunting knife as well. Like I said, a lot of it was literally just getting a lot of the stuff out of your way. Certainly no upper hand guard. I mean, almost no knife, other than truly some sort of combat knife, really needs an upper hand guard. I mean, it's just something that's gonna get in your way when you're trying to use it. So, the other thing about this knife was trying to balance having enough rounded edge to make the knife good at skinning an animal. Because if you try to skin it, I don't know, does anybody here hunt at all? Kind of stretching a little bit? Okay. But basically, we'll show you sort of like the antithesis of a hunting knife. Okay, that would suck. All right. It just, you know, if you try to, you know, if you were to try to skin an animal and you start trying to get the hide off them, you're basically cutting just with that little corner right there. That would be your one little thing going like that. Versus, you know, going like this, you're literally sweeping with this whole rounded edge. I'm doing my best not to cut myself. Whole rounded edge. If you had a knife that was just a dedicated skinning knife, you would actually see the tip come up and actually either go like that or the tip would be straight, but the belly of the knife would be really round because you'd get this whole sort of sweeping motion as you're, you know, trying to skin the animal. But not many guys want to carry, you know, a knife for field dressing and then one dedicated to skinning. I mean, some guys do that. So you try to combine them a little bit, and that's why this one is a little bit of a drop point. The point comes down. Point comes down a little bit, and what that allows you to do is when you're actually, you know, getting the animal, when you put the knife in, you can actually tilt it up a little bit, and it brings the point, you know, basically off of the guts when you know, go to run it up the animal and field dress the animal. So it's deliberate that it's actually like that. It's not just, you know, not just for styling, although I think it looks rather nice myself. What else? Little lanyard hole. I mean, I actually have a little lanyard on mine because if you're working with your knife and you actually drop it, it's dark and it's wet and rainy, it's, you know, it can be hard to find, and sometimes if you drop it in the animal, it can be really hard to find, which, anyway. I've unfortunately cut a number of times, that's unfortunate. But, you know, other than that, like I say, actually almost a distinct lack of features is actually one of the primary things about it. It's just not fancy, gaudy. Easy to clean, you know, because inevitably it has to get cleaned and sharpened, so.
What's the purpose of the mid-range detention?
You know, that's a darn good question.
It's pretty purposeful in the cutout.
Oh, it is. Oh, no, it was definitely put in there. The guys that are designing that thought that was really cool, that was sort of reminiscent of like the half cock on a revolver. The market hated it. Absolutely hated it. So again, it's one of those things you look at and go, there's a reason you don't see that on any other knife.
And another little one right before the lock, is this the same story?
What's that?
Another little one right before the lock.
Well, that's actually just the liner clearing.
Yeah.
That's just the ball detent as it's sliding past the blade. The ball detent clears and the liner hits the blade and then it comes over and snaps in.
What's the price on the gun? It's the handgun itself?
The actual handgun itself. You know, I don't know. I think about $700. What's that?
I was just wondering in comparison, you said that the knife was around 200?
Yeah, the gun's about $700.
Okay.
7 to 8.
Did you make the handle?
No, a company called VZ Grips made the handle. They're kind of the hot new thing in 1911 grips, and so we actually partnered with them, and they're actually making grips for our knives now. So we actually kind of do some, you know, combo promoting and stuff, and it's been well received. So
Cool. So I wanted to wrap it up, but if you guys want to come up and check out the knives and ask more questions, definitely encourage you to do that. And I just wanted to say too that the next Curiosity Club is October 25th, and we have Comedy Sports' Patrick Short. Patrick has led corporate improv workshops since 1989. With the help of the International Applied Improvisation Network, he's developed a series of workshops for design thinking. Improv theory and practice clearly illuminate the mindsets needed for project and team success. Sample what improv can bring you in a fun, fast-paced hour that just might change how you see everything. All right, so that's going to be great. And yeah, definitely come up and ask more questions, check out the knives, yeah. Great, thanks so much. Thank you. Yeah.